Hey guys, what up? Tominator here. So in this one, we're just going to do a quick little comparison of Chris Bumstead and his best shape ever. So we got 2017 on the left versus 2019 on the right. And I think most of us could agree that last year in 2018 was not his best. And probably C-Bum himself would be the first to admit that, because I know he was going through some health problems and whatnot prepping for that contest. So that's why I've narrowed it down to just these two versions of his physique. And right off the bat, I gotta admit that there's not a whole lot of change to be found here, guys. Honestly, the biggest difference is the lighting and his tan. And of course, the Lila Brada stash, which must have been the icing on the cake that put him over the top this year. But in this front double biceps, you can see that the outline that he carves is still spectacular with that tiny waist, the flaring lats, the big full chest and rib cage. One improvement that I can notice is through the arms. His biceps and triceps both look a little bigger and fuller now than they did back then. The caveat here is that it could just be the case that he was a little bit drier, a little bit more conditioned, and as a result, a little flatter in 2017. You can note that through his legs, they look harder, they look a little bit grainier. His serratus looks a little sharper. So I'm not sure if this is all true muscle growth or if he was just a little fuller this year. But in any case, those arms are looking better. I think his proportions as a result are nicer and better than they were in 2017, where his arms looked a little bit small for that torso. So overall, I think he cuts a better figure here in 2019 in this front double bicep. Okay, front lat spread. Now, this is not a mandatory pose in classic physique, but I think it's important to take a look at some of these other shots because it paints a more thorough picture of what they really look like, right? After all, we've only got 4 compulsories in this division, which is barely even enough to fully judge a physique. But in this comparison, it's kind of tough to judge because the angle's slightly off, especially for 2019, and I think that that's hurting the width that he's presenting. He doesn't look like he's filling it out as much as he was back in 2017. I would definitely go with this one on the left over the one on the right, and I'm not sure that that's really fair to Chris Bumstead because, like I said, the angle's off, and you got to keep in mind in picture comparisons like this, it can all come down to when the exact time the picture was snapped. Because if it was off by even a few milliseconds and the guy's transitioning out of it or he's not fully 100% flexing, that can really hurt our perception of him. So overall, I definitely prefer 2017 based on this look right here, but you got to take it with a hefty grain of salt. In the side chest, though, it's almost a carbon copy. You can't pick apart too much here. And going body part for body part, he looks virtually identical everywhere. I mean, I don't see a lot of added thickness through the chest. The arms, which look bigger in the front double, don't appear any bigger here. They look pretty much the same size to me. The delt as well. Through the legs, in terms of the quad sweep and the hamstring drop, it's almost the same. I really can't. There's not much to say here, guys, in this side chest. Side tricep, another non-compulsory, but he hit it both years, so why not talk about it? Now, through the upper body, it looks pretty much the same both years. If anything, that tricep might be a little thicker and meatier in 2019. Otherwise, pretty much the same. Through the lower body, though, is where the differences start to become more apparent because we're noticing a little bit more detail, a little bit more muscle maturity, if you will. You can see that faint etching through the side of his quad, just a little bit more detail up by the glute ham tie-in. Of course, that was kind of obscured in 2017 because they had to wear those longer posing trunks. But we're not really seeing much detail in the side of his quad here in 2017. Now, again, that could just come down to whether he was tensing it or not, but still, I think that 2019 overall is a better look. In the back double bicep, once again, you can note the added size through the arms here. I also can see that his lats appear to be ever so slightly wider. You can note that they're kind of curving a little bit more through the top there. Whereas in 2017, they kind of just go more in a straight line, especially on the left side. So he might have brought up his width a little bit through the back. But in terms of the thickness and the detail, it looks pretty much unchanged. Honestly, the biggest difference is the color of his skin and the posing trunks, which are now shorter. Because now we can see some striations in the glutes, whereas it was completely covered in 2017. I will say that his hamstrings in 2019 in this shot look a little bit more defined, a little bit more ripped. But when we get into the Christmas tree shot and looking at the hamstrings again, now in 2017, I'm seeing more cuts and they look pretty much identical to 2019. In terms of the back itself, not a whole lot of change here, honestly. The lower back, the lumbar region, looks a little more pronounced, a little thicker in 2019. I'm not sure if that just comes down to the way he's hitting the pose, though. And lastly, we come to the ab and thigh. This is probably his best pose overall. And I gotta say, my eyes go to 2017, guys. Again, it's more head-on, so that's kind of helping his outline. Like, the lats look like they're tapering out a little bit wider. His midsection looks more cut up and chiseled, especially through the serratus and the obliques. I will say, I think in 2019, his abs look a little bit neater and more symmetrical, maybe. But I'm just not seeing this quite the same level of detail. But he's kind of taken more of a wider stance. He's got his arms a little bit wider as well. I think he's doing it on purpose to try and accentuate his X-frame. Overall, I prefer 2017, actually. I think that he looks tremendous both years, don't get me wrong. But if I had to pick between these two pictures, 2017 is the winner for me. And when he gets into that final signature vacuum shot, this is just legendary status. He looks amazing. No two ways about it. This is one of the best vacuums in the history of the sport. It stands right up there with the likes of the Frank Zanes and the Tony Pearsons, because he's just so full through the ribcage, and it's got such a pleasing shape to it. The serratus, again, looks amazing. Though, I gotta say, I think in 2017, we can see more detail in that area, right? And it also looks a little sharper, the lower edge of his ribcage, more pronounced. So, again, maybe that's just down to lighting. Maybe it's down to when they snapped the picture and they got it at the exact right moment in 2017 and they were off by half a second in 2019. I don't know. However, one thing I will say about 2019 is that he looks a little wider, and that's helping his taper. So I think that he definitely did pack on a little bit of width through the lats. So that's helping with his outline and everything. But again, when we go downstairs to the legs, I think that they looked a little sharper in 2017. So that's going to pretty much do it for this one, guys. Like I said, there really wasn't a whole lot to pick apart. I thought that there'd be bigger changes, especially considering Chris Bumstead is so young. He's like in his early to mid-20s. I think he's 24, correct me if I'm wrong. So in a 2-year time span, we would expect him, or I would anyway, to make drastic improvements because he's still so young, right? He should be growing into his body still and bringing up weak points and whatnot. So for this little bit of change to have occurred and not really anything drastic at all, it's a little concerning to me. Maybe it's the weight cap, because these guys are limited in terms of how much muscle they can put on their body. So I'm not sure if that's what's holding him back, or if it's a conscious decision that he didn't think he really needed to make that many improvements. And obviously, I guess he didn't at the end of the day. He ended up sealing the deal this year, dethroning Breon. So it was obviously enough in the eyes of the judges. But I just, personally, I'm a little disappointed. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more progress in a 2-year period for such a young bodybuilder. But anyway, guys, maybe that's just me being unnecessarily harsh. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and maybe I'll do a video like this on Breon as well, so we can kind of gauge his progress over the same time period. Thank you all for watching. Until next time, this has been the Tominator signing off, and I'll be back!